This episode of All Things Business, the podcast, is brought to you by our digital media partner, DFA Law. DFA Law, providers of expert and dedicated legal advice to businesses and families since 1838. DFA Law, the law firm for life.
Frazer,
Ben.
you right?
Very well. On the road again.
Yeah, sort your collar out, mate.
I've done the top button.
No, yeah, I know that. You were going to take Simon's eye out with that. Simon, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're here in the, what was the Terrace Bar?
Terrace Bar at Stadium MK, home of the MK Dons, with Performance and Operations Director Simon Crampton. Thank you for joining us. We were saying before, well, it looks like a little media room, doesn't it? Looks like we're on Sky Sports doing the proper interview. So for those that aren't aware of you, Simon, Ben, he came up with something early that I won't ruin it. I'll let him.
Well, I said you're like the Dean Lewington of MK Don's non-playing staff. Would that be fair?
Well, I've been here along, not quite as long as Dean, but nearly as long. So yeah, I mean, there is a few other staff who've been here equally as long, and a couple that have been here a little bit longer. But yeah, it's my 18th season, so yeah, I've been here a while.
Brilliant. And take us back to where it started from you going back almost as a schoolboy. Did you know that you always wanted to have a career in football, or?
Yeah, well, if I go back to as a schoolboy, I wanted to be a farmer.
Okay.
And one day, I was looking at college courses and stuff as I got a bit older, and my dad said, "Son, we've not got a farm." So that sort of put end to that.
Is that, I've got to ask, is that because you've got other family that are farmers, or?
No, this is going back really young, but I like the outdoors and I like working outside. I love nature, and that sort of farming thing became, I did a A-level environmental science, and that farming thing then probably became more looking into the outdoors, ecology, that sort of thing. Yeah. But I was also doing PE, I was also doing biology, and I loved two things. I loved anatomy, so doing sort of GCSE A-level PE, I really loved the anatomy side of it, learning everything about the body. And then I also, for some reason, really loved sort of first aid, and I wasn't in the St. John's Ambulance or anything like that, but I was in the Scouts. And I think that passion probably went back to being in Cubs. And I did the first aid badge. And you had to bring in a first aid kit. So most people came in with a lunch box with a few plasters in. But my dad went out and bought me this real bright blue, shiny first aid box from Boots. And I was really proud of it. And then when anyone in the house, Cubs, I'd have been 10, 11. Yeah. When anyone in the house got a cut or anything like that, it was me that had to go and treat it.
Okay.
So I think that's probably my earliest sort of insight into the sort of the physiotherapy profession I came into was that. And then, I did my A-levels and, looked at different career options and really liked the idea of being a physiotherapist, but in sports. And actually, you said football, but rugby was my sport. I was really...
League or union?
Both. I predominantly played rugby league at school. And then, it's like when you're young, I played rugby union on a Wednesday with a college, rugby union sometimes with the local team on a Saturday, and then my own age group on a Sunday, I played rugby league. But rugby league was the one I was probably more into. And then then found out about the different options and courses, and I was going to do physio, but then I found about this new course called sports therapy, which at the time was in its infancy. I think the university course had only just started. I think there was a year above us, and I got into that university course in London. So left the bright lights of Blackpool and moved to London and did a sports therapy degree. Following that, then I sort of worked in the NHS private sector. I was also working for London Wasps part-time and Queen's Park Rangers part-time, which then really sort of fueled my ambition, I guess, to work in football or in rugby. I suppose where my stumbling block came a little bit was that when I sort of graduated in sport, the chartered physiotherapy title became sort of the title you needed to work in professional sport. And as a sports therapist, you don't have that. Although we were sold the dream, when we went to do the course, that by the time you graduate, you'd be registered with the Health and Care Professions Council, and so you would sort of have that similar chartered status. That never happened, and it still hasn't to this day. So I decided to go back to university, and I did a master's degree in physiotherapy, which was full-time, worked in the NHS, worked in sort of hospital settings. And then I was, weighing up my odds that there was an opportunity to potentially go at London Wasps and do more work there. And then I got a phone call from a friend, Damien Doyle, who was working here as the fitness coach, who I was actually at uni with for my undergraduate degree, and said there's a job at Milton Keynes Dons. So, I looked into it, said, okay, yeah, no, I'm interested. So I came down for an interview on the Thursday, met quite a few people at the club, met the chairman. Martin Allen was the manager.
It's going back.
That was an experience, let me tell you. top man Martin is. And then on the way home, I got a phone call saying, the job's yours, we'd love you to be on board, but you need to start on the Monday. So that was my sort of first thing into the fast-paced stage of football. That was Thursday, yeah. So luckily, I just finished my master's degree, so I wasn't in full-time work. I'd got part-time role, as I said. So it was an easy fix for me. So I packed my bag, and the rest is history.
Here you are.
In 18 years, 18 years is some stint in any job, let alone in football. But in football, there won't be many people, I think, at any club that's done 18 years. How was you? I know obviously your career has progressed now to performance and operations director, but just talk us through the stages of that, because you obviously came in as head of physio, and then you did they introduced sports science.
Yeah, so the first role was academy physiotherapist. So I was like the head academy physiotherapist, and I arrived on the Monday morning, and we were at Woughton on the Green. There was the facilities that we have at the stadium weren't here then, and Martin had everyone operating out the training ground. So I remember saying to the kit man at the time, where's the medical room? And he took me to a dressing room, and it was a Woughton on the Green dressing room. We'll leave that to the imagination. Not as nice as they are now, and that's saying something. And in that room, there was an old wooden sort of treatment bed, very rickety thing, and 2 boxes which were full of old, odds and sods of tape and gone out of date medications and that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh, what have I done here? So that was my first role. And then, within that time, we started to sort of essentially set up a department for the academy. We brought in 2 physios who would then stop running the academy, and I moved into the first team with Martin Allen, and then into the second season with Paul Ince. When I moved into the football, I was sort of the first team. I was a head physiotherapist then, and then following that year, around about when Robbie Di Matteo came in, and we'd got more staff, it became head of sports medicine, which I did then for around about 9 years, 8-9 years. And then we had a small restructure again when we sort of incorporated sports science, just to sort of improve the continuity, I guess, in what we were doing. And then that was head of sports science and medicine, which I did for a further around about 3 years, and then now into the role of performance operations director.
And if we go back, and this isn't aimed at MK Dons at all, but it's more generalisation, do you think there was almost like 18, 20 years ago, there was an underappreciation for recovery and sports science and physiotherapy? Loaded question. We did a podcast with Frazer, Neil Rudder, and he was at Liverpool
when he joined Liverpool.
1993. They didn't have a physiotherapist. Now that's only 10 years before you would have joined here.
Yeah.
So do you think would that be a fair comment that maybe football as a community perhaps didn't have the appreciation, whereas now we've got
100%, and I'm actually back at university now, and this is something I'm looking at is in some of the work I'm doing now is looking at the sort of the development on how far we've developed. We're really in sort of a golden age of sports science and sports medicine. And when I first came in, I remember playing saying to me, "Are you chartered?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm a physio, of course I'm chartered." And that was for a long period prior to that. You used to have the sponge men who were often ex-players and not always were qualified. And they were sort of delivering the, sports medicine essentially to still $1 million players, at that time. And it's just the advances we've seen in my career, from what we got GPS in here at MK Dons about 2009, and that was revolutionary. And, we've seen so many different things come in since then.
And just on that, just give us an example of GPS. Just talk us through what that is. That's the
so they wear it on the back. It's a device that, again, and the science and the body of work that's gone into that has just got better and better as time gone on. But essentially, when we first had it in, we were just looking at how far a player has covered in a game in kilometres. But now the metrics are, such more advanced than that. We look at accelerations, decelerations, how much high-speed running they've done in a game. And ultimately what we're doing is we're comparing games to games, and we build up a database of what we call the acute chronic workload ratio, where we're looking at what their chronic workload is, so their workload over 4 weeks versus their workload in this given week. And the aim of that is that we're not trying to overcook or undercook the athletes.
So could that be almost a preventative measure against injury?
Exactly that, yeah.
Which is very topical given the amount of games that players are playing now.
It's a stress on their body, and it's making sure that they're being looked after and coached.
And do you report that on a one-to-one basis, or do you discuss that as a team collectively so the lads can actually see?
Yeah, so a bit about, we've got a fantastic staff downstairs. That's underneath us where we are at the moment in the basement, where all our facilities are, and we've got Tom Bromley, who's our head of strength and conditioning, and he's really, really well versed in GPS, the metrics, and how we use the metrics. So he'll produce all sorts of documents and data and stats just to show us exactly where our players are at any one time. We can do it in a game. So if there's a player coming back from injury or there's a player we're concerned about, we could potentially look at on the iPad, check his metrics, see where he's at,
really?
Advise the manager that he's, we sometimes may have a predetermined load that we want him to get to, and then we might start suggesting that he comes off. I mean, that's sort of Tom's role on a match day, but it's competitive sports, and it's just another bit of information the manager can receive and can act on it if he feels it necessary.
And in terms, is that data? Say, I'm just thinking of it as a recruitment tool as well. If you were going to say the gaffer wanted to go and buy a player, could you ask for that access to that data of the? Would that be usual or would that be unusual?
Yeah, so I think it'd be something when you're well down the line with that recruitment process. But part of your medical process would be to find out, what they've been doing, what they normally do, what's normal for them, because obviously we want a smooth transition when they come in the team. And if it's a player who's been loading really highly in his previous training regime, and he comes into our system, and we may load lower than that, then we need to make sure that the appropriate adjustments are made, that we don't just suddenly stop, because that could put him at risk of injury as well.
Yeah, and in terms of like getting more out of players, which business people always want to get more out of the team as well, is it a case of part of your role in your teams to almost improve players' metrics, say for example year on year or from pre-season, and saying, right, well, this is what they've done now, but actually I think this type of player or this type of position that they're playing in, they should actually be able to hit this? And then do you have targets like that, or does it not really work like that?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I mean, so certainly in pre-season, for example, when new players come in, there'll be a battery of testing that the sports science and sports medicine staff put the players through. So that may provide targets that we're working towards. We've also obviously got the GPS data then that we may be trying to improve, something often maybe on a fitness point of view from an endurance, on the endurance side of things. But ultimately it's context driven. So the metrics that a player might produce under one manager are going to be different under the next manager.
Yeah, counter pressing, or if it's
exactly that. Yeah. So it all depends on the context and the position of the player, and and in an ideal world, which isn't always possible in football because of we know there's a high turnover, but in an ideal world you build you build up a library, and that a centre half in a MK Dons team produces on average these sort of metrics in a game, and you've got that comparison. But then, as I said, you can't always then, when you're recruiting, you can't get these in advance. You just have a look at them when you can, really.
The data is fascinating because, as maybe a lot of people watching, listening to this, we sat at home and we're all guilty of it, sat there screaming at the telly saying, try harder, run faster, get back, do this. But when you delve into the data and the science of it, they may or may not be told to.
That's why they're at home and not on the field.
Yeah, correct. But we've all done it, right?
Yeah, well,
we've all done it, and
that's why we love the sport. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and we will all continue to do it. But that data is fascinating.
So is there a crossover here between your team as the medical and scientific professionals and the football coaching / tactical management side?
Oh yeah, massively. Yeah, we know we're an interdisciplinary team, so we've all got an idea of we've all got our own lanes almost, but it's the ability to cross over.
Yeah.
So there's lots of examples that happen in day to day. Really, we might have let's use the centre half again, who the coaching team may feel he's not getting above the players enough on set pieces, and he's still to jump higher. So we may do some testing on him, and actually, He's
He's at
tested.
capacity.
He's got the capacity. And he's just as good as other players when it comes to jumping. So what is it? Is it game understanding? Is it the technique and how he's jumping? It'll just give a bit more focus. Is this something that our sports science and medicine staff need to focus on? Something our coaching staff need to focus on? Is it something they all need to focus on?
Yeah. And did the players? Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go on.
Did the players? Will they in your experience of being here? Will they come to you and say, Simon, I want to work on this part of my game? Well, since 2009, sorry, but the metrics, what's it set up? What do I need to improve on? So again, we use that crossover into business of some self-development, yeah.
Going above and beyond.
Yeah. Do they come to you and go, right, something easy?
What do I need? Yeah.
How do I win more headers?
What do I need to do differently? So they've got the training, but do I need to go and do an extra half an hour here or half an hour there to be able to deliver that?
So I think this is something that's really evolved probably in the last sort of 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And probably since through our academies in the EPPP program, where players now at academy level all have their individual development plans, go through a sort of PDR process that you might have in the business world, and using not just physical data but also using we've got a fantastic data scientist in Ram who produces all the data you can imagine on the football pitch, and it's about marring all that up together, and then producing an IDP, an individual development plan that focuses on the areas that they need to improve on. And that has always really probably previously been like manager led or coaching led, and some managers have been really into that process, others have not so much. But now as time's gone on, we all own it, particularly the players at the centre of it, but every single department across the football club owns it. It's something that we're looking at our methods and how we do that internally at the moment and how we can improve that. The academy, are doing it really well at the moment under the leadership of Ben Smith, our academy manager, and it's, I think, getting the players. You're talking about when you had a Neil Ruddock on, and how we've changed. It's getting the players to buy into it, and because they're doing it at an early age now, it's much easier. Yeah. An example of that is when I first started out, and we knew the benefits of whole body cryotherapy, whole body water immersion. When the science around that started coming out, I'd have to get players in a headlock to get them in an ice bath. Yeah. But now they're complaining it's not cold enough.
Everybody's doing it. It's how the game changes.
Yeah.
One thing we did a podcast the other week with a chap called Rory Sutherland, says we're driven by data.
Oh, marketing guy.
Yeah. Fascinating. Driven by data. I'm obsessed with data. We've done this, we did this, and working everything out. But the crossover in business, so data in football is the immersion of AI in business, in my opinion. How do you combat the raw talent of a young footballer to the data that's coming through? That you've got somebody, who was a chap that was at QPR years ago, Ravel Morrison. Everybody talks about how talented he was.
Or more recently, Sancho.
Yeah, or more recently, Sancho, who's just found his form when he's ended up back in Germany, which is remarkable. But how do you balance that? Talent against data. So, is it a challenge?
Yeah, massively. And this is an area of research that I'm currently looking at. And, in football, we are very data driven. Yeah. But one of the things, and it's not just football, it's lots of sports that there's very limited knowledge about, is the qualitative side of it, about the footballer themselves. Yeah. We talk about having a high performance environment, and so what's a high performing environment? Well, we need to do this, this, and this. But what do the players think about that? And there's not really any good qualitative evidence at the moment that's looking into that. There is some evidence. For example, you take injury prevention, and there's some research that's looked at injury prevention, and it looks at, well, players know that they're at risk of injury, they accept there's a risk of injury, they understand the consequences of injury, yet they're not fully compliant with injury reduction programs, injury prevention programs. Why?
It was really interesting, and I think the other variable to throw into that as well is players' backgrounds. So without going too deep, but no, well, you imagine you go and sign a player, but he's come from Devon or he's come from Blackpool. Blackpool to Milton Keynes. You're not commuting that every day. You've got to leave. Yeah, so you're either away from your family, and then you think that what are the impacts on that? And this is something, going back to the armchair fan, that football fans don't appreciate one bit. They see the players playing on the pitch, but it's actually what else goes on behind that in terms of data, etc., and the other variables that can make the difference, because it comes back to those adjustments. And this is why football and business is or sport and business, because it's so similar. Data driven, yes, but also results driven. Because it's the same in the boardroom. If the results aren't there on the balance sheet, changes you've got to make, just like what it is on the football field.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that passion come through. That I don't know if we can talk about Northampton. Yeah, we can talk about Northampton Saints. We can't talk about Northampton Football Club. But Northampton Saints, you look at their social media at the moment and how high that team is. You talk about high performance. That team go out there and they feel that they're going to win at the moment. They come back into that changing room. They sing as a team, and you put all that together. That's it. You put all of that together, and now it's not only the high performance, it's the camaraderie of the team, but you've got all of that built in there, and then you have the data.
So you and your team, you're very much part of the match day team and squad, etc.
No, not anymore. I used to be.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got Adam Ross now, who's our head of rehabilitation, who sort of manages the sports science and medicine department, similar to my old role. My role now is sort of changed in the fact that I still oversee sports science and medicine, but I've also taken other departments that we sort of call really our performance departments. Anything that we feel, leads towards performance on the pitch. So the grounds team, for example, between Liam and I, we look over our academy, and obviously Ben Smith is the manager there, as I said, but Liam and I will manage it from a sort of a leadership and budget point of view. Day-to-day operations, kitchen cleaning, all those sort of things.
Lots of different,
the right environment.
Yeah, lots of different hats that you're having to wear under that role. So do you get Saturdays off then, so to speak?
Well, no, I still go to the games. So we're at the games.
Home and away.
Yeah. So we're on the motorway a lot. The bonus now is I don't need to travel the night before if it's an away game, so I get to spend that at home with the family on a Friday evening. Although I might go overnight for Barrow because I'm not sure I fancy doing that. I'm not sure I fancy doing that one. But
so out of your in your 18th season now, is there one, or what would be the one success story that really stands out for you, where you can say, I don't know, it might have been a player that had a real couple of bad back-to-back injuries, and you worked with him and went above and beyond, and you brought him back to full fitness, or I don't know, a piece of data exercise that led to something. What would be the one sort of standout moment for you? I know I've put you on the spot there, mate.
Difficult question. I mean, there's without mentioning any names, there's probably some footballers who had significant injuries at previous clubs, and they found their way at our level, but were much better than this level. But because of their injuries or whatever had happened, they'd ended up at this level, and we sort of were able to get the most out of them on the playing field. Complicated injury presentations that we've seen that have been frustrating for everybody, and I remember one where we got one player back and he'd been out for about 9 months, and he scored on the first game back, and we celebrated on the side of the pitch.
Oh, brilliant.
So I think things like that always stick in memory. But then of course it's the collective effort when you get promoted and getting promoted to the championship, because that group of staff at that time, I think that was our 5th year working together, and we got real continuity with the manager, with the staff, and so it was like a real sort of team effort, and you really felt part of something then. Yeah. And of course we've had other successes, but I think just that particular year, the championship year, because of course we came straight back down, but just the build up to that and the way it happened, it was probably my fondest sort of memory at the club.
And in terms of, I mean, look, we're just outside I know that I said not to date stamp it, so I'm going to kick myself here, but
we're near the beginning of 2024.
Yeah, so we're in and around the playoffs just underneath at the moment. But in terms of your team and the physio and the medical science and the performance department that we've got here at MK Dons, that's got to be on par with a championship team.
Yeah, look, when we
other League Two and even League One clubs don't have the infrastructure and setup than what we've got here, do they?
Yeah, we like to think we've got good facilities and we've got excellent staff. And we spoke about me being here a long time, but Adam Ross, who is one of the big unsung heroes downstairs, he's been here for 16 years and worked very close with me during that time. And Tom Bromley, we mentioned before, he's been here sort of about 11, 12 years now. So we've got some real good continuity in the department, which means it's the same in business. I always use business for this, because if any business wants to succeed but they keep changing the sort of their leadership model every 6 months to a year, now you're asking for trouble, aren't you? And that's what football always does. So I think us having the new model that we have with Liam and myself, and then the continuity we've got in the departments now, it really helps with that. It gives us that consistency, so a head coach can come in, and of course we know it's football. We're going to have different changes.
That's already there, isn't it?
But so I think it's exciting, and I think let's see where we go.
So sorry.
No, go on, mate.
If you look at the change in football in 18 years on the physical side or the physio side, what does the game need to do to improve on the next level? So looking at the next 10 years, what do we need to do? Because I use an example, not so much in the men's game, but if you look at the women's game, the amount of ACL injuries that keep happening. And again, the science will lead us to why that's happening in a few years. But is there something that you'd like to see available for the players, or is there something that could make the data better for you?
Yeah, look, I think it's some really interesting things that are happening in terms of sort of the way the game's running from a rule point of view with the head injuries and head injury substitutions. I think that's going to be really, really important, and will hopefully be one of those things that you might not realise the importance of at the time, but certainly in the future you will do. Yeah. Look, we're on the cusp of probably going all down this AI route. There's already there's already happening. There's already teams using AI. There's already software out there you can produce, but there's just so many variables, and we just don't understand them all yet. And it's, as I say, it's an avenue I'm looking at, is the variables in and around the player, the stuff you can't measure. So I think we need to really see a lot more in that, in sort of qualitative research and insights, looking into what the players' perceptions are of the performance environment, of performing, and on the psychology side as well. I mean, psychologists are commonplace in the big clubs, not so much down the lower leagues. But I think we need to really support our players in the modern day. It's not just football; it's across society, isn't it? With mental health and that side of
Correct.
things.
Yeah. I was just going to go on to that. If you look at the mental side, that again, these players, they're giving their all twice a week training, putting everything into it, and it only takes an injury, being away from their family, negative comments or responses from fans, media, etc. That needs to be there. Yeah. Ben's been quoted a number of times. Mental health was the pandemic before the pandemic began, and I mean, it's sad that we have to explain to people how important it is, but yeah, you've nailed that 100%. And hopefully with AI, VAR might actually work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the mental health thing. I mean, when I first started in my career, if a player had a bad game, he would get, it was Facebook was about 2007, I think, and so it was on the cusp of Facebook when I started. But if he had a bad game, he might get someone in MK News or The Citizen would give him a 4 or 5 out of 10 rating, and that would be about it. It might be something on an online forum that they were in the infancy. But now, if you had a bad game, you get, not everybody, but there's the potential to get abused, and your families to get abused, and there's just no escaping from it. It's the same with, it's the same. I see it firsthand with my children, and there's just no escape from it, is there? If from the children's level, you have an argument at school, it ends at school and it's forgotten about the next day. But it can continue, and that's the same in every walk of life, I guess.
On the football side, you have to question when it became acceptable that you can rip into somebody. It's not even about the football.
Did you watch the Delhi interview that you did with Gary Neville?
Yeah.
So I've never met Delhi. I'm a Liverpool fan, and I've never been in his company before. But I see and appreciate him as a wonderful footballer, just like everybody else does. I cried watching that. I felt so incredibly sad for him, and they had taken, or what he'd gone through, and the journey that he'd gone through, to listen to. I mean, thankfully, it looks like he's in a much better place now, but he just looked so sad and empty. And yet, you look back at his goal against Crystal Palace, where he's done our volley over and then volleyed it in from 25 yards, and some of the goals that he scored here. And I remember we did an interview with Carl Robinson, and Carl Robinson rang Brendan Rodgers. He rang Brendan Rodgers, I think, or somebody connected at Liverpool, and said, "You got to buy him," before he went to Spurs. And we didn't. And you sometimes there are those sliding doors moments where you think, I wonder if something. had happened or had gone to another club, or I'm not just saying that because my connection to Liverpool, but anybody or another coach or another manager had just got hold of them, like they say about Fergie with Gaza.
Yeah.
You know, would Gaza have ended up at the journey that he did? And I just think but I really, really hope that lad can come back and go and play Premier League football.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think Sean Dyche has done he's doing a great job in supporting him, and he's been quite vocal. But when Delhi's gone through that, there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of other footballers that have gone through something similar.
Yeah, and it's, going back to all the metrics and everything, and we're in this multivariate environment, and your performance is judged on you hit the crossbar and you didn't score the goal, but you could have been a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10 all game, but because you hit that crossbar, you're the reason the team didn't win. And that's horrible, isn't it? And I go out to Delhi, and I think, obviously I worked with Delhi for New Delhi growing up, and then worked with him for a long time, and absolutely amazing guy. But it's not for me to say, but Delhi and other footballers, if they'd had that support maybe earlier on in their careers, would it have benefited them? Probably.
Yeah, it's having that support, not only to play, because they are humans at the end of the day as well, and they need to be looked after. So we're going to come to a
but before we do,
close. You're asking the question.
Yes, I am.
Good.
We always like to ask our guests this. So Saturday night, dinner party, 3 people, past or present. Who are you having around the table?
Well, I've got to go with my wife and my 2 daughters. I think that's, that's the safest. But in general,
but just in case
Friday night.
Yeah.
Saturday night, you've got the table again.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
Heroes, aspirations.
Yeah,
Somebody that's taking you amiss.
Yeah, I think I would. I'd probably be interested. You've got all the obvious ones like religious leaders, historical figures, but I'd be interested to have some of the greats of football management. Sir Alex Ferguson, for example, Arsene Wenger, just to get their thoughts on how they, what was success to them, how did they set up their environment, why did they feel they were so successful? Because there's so much learnings there to be had.
We've got a lot to be thankful to Arsene Wenger for, really, because he almost pushed the Premier League probably 3 or 4 years ahead of its time in terms of when he came to Arsenal and how he implemented stuff. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
From exactly that, from a sports science point of view, and it's they were mavericks of the time, and I think that those sort of people would be really interesting to find out, to learn from them and find out what they did. Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to you on the third one, but
it'd be a weird combination, but it'd have to be somebody like Kurt Cobain, a rock star of some description. So
I can imagine Sir Alex loving that.
Yeah.
Interesting one. Turn it down, and you do it straight away.
I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, really insightful.
Thank you so much.
Fine, thank you.
Really grateful for you taking the time.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
No problem.
Best
Thank
luck.
you very much.
Cheers.